Hi, guys. So I know we're doing this via Zoom, so we can all ask questions live, so everybody can kind of listen to each other. But like I said, I'm not going to do, I don't think, live exercises. I think it's just going to take too long. And I'd rather everybody, if you have any individual questions about your dog, then that way we can cover that instead. I think I've got everybody in here. Ooh. Yay. I don't even know how many we were going to expect, but that looks like it's just about everybody. All right, Susie, you die and you're not putting your video on? Okay. You know what I don't like about Zoom is you just make a little noise and you get blasted like in the main screen. Does anybody else find that annoying?
That's why I put myself on mute.
Yeah,
because
good idea.
I'm laughing with you and I must be on the screen when I'm laughing. So I put myself on mute so I can silently laugh. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'll get everybody to mute themselves. Not because I don't want to hear your lovely voices, but that way I can kind of see everyone. And if anybody has a question, you can maybe put your hand up or something. Let me see how gallery. Okay. Now, if you want to be able to see everyone as well, you're probably just going to have to go up to the top of your screen and turn your view to gallery. Hi, Susie.
Hi.
So everybody, if you haven't muted, mute yourself, and it's up to you if you want to see everybody or not, but you know, or if you want to be seen, it's up to you. Now, if anybody has any questions, and feel free to ask questions anytime. I know I have a real tendency to rant, and I don't want to rant the whole time because it is a lot of information. It's some different concepts. If anybody's interested in kind of neuroscience stuff or brain physiology stuff, you might be familiar with some of it. But so if I say something, you're like, oh, I want to hear more about that, just maybe we'll do it in a really lame way. Just put your hand up and I can ask, and that way you can ask a question. But don't feel like you have to remember everything. I think it's good if we just go through all the concepts, the kind of theory, then I'll, because it'll give you an idea of the why. And then I'll kind of go through phase 1, which is what we call the reset. And then I'll kind of move on to what phase 2 would be, which would be when you start doing more practical training exercises. And I'll post the exercises after I've described them. A lot of them you would already be doing in certain ways anyway. And then when you get to the point of phase 2 where you're doing the exercises, you can just post like your 5-minute training session or each individual exercise that you would do in your training session. And I can help like troubleshoot or help you fine tune that. And you can just ask questions as you go through everything. Does anybody have any questions? Because you're probably all like, what the hell is she talking about? But does anybody have any questions before I start? Yep.
I saw this was being recorded. Are we going to be able to go back?
Apparently it's being recorded. Yeah, I can see. Let me see. Pause, stop recording. It is recording.
Okay, sweet. That was my only question.
Best of my ability. Yeah, there's a little red light up there that's going like this and it says recording. So what I have to do is, now look, I think you guys do have permission if you want to hit record as well. I'm happy for you to do that, but obviously there's no permission to share it anywhere. But if you just want to have the recording for yourself, that's fine. But like I said, please don't share it anywhere. Yeah. Okay, any other questions before I start? No? Cool. Nice to see everyone, by the way. Like I said, it weirds me out because it makes me know that I really am talking to people. I don't just pretend that I'm talking to myself. Okay, so all of you guys have been going through the members page. So a lot of this is going to be stuff that you're already doing. It's just in a much more intensive way, and it's for a slightly different reason. So whether you have an education in teaching or any psych background. Does somebody here have a psych background? Isn't there somebody in the members page with this? Right. So you'll understand a little bit of what I'm talking about. So most of dog training in terms of learning really focuses on operant conditioning, which is the, positive reinforcement, positive punishment, to remove something, like how we provide consequences for behavior, whether it's good or bad, how we teach new behaviors, which is great. That's the staple of how we teach things to dogs. But there's different ways dogs learn, or how dogs exist, that goes beyond like operant conditioning, classical conditioning. Because in psychology, this is what we call behaviorism, which is just a big theory of learning. But there's more to life and how we learn and how we exist than behaviorism. So what this program is based on is more the actual neuroscience of emotion. So kind of why animals and humans do what they do based on emotions, and also on the idea, which there is some level of research and data into, that emotions, or the main emotions we feel or our dogs feel, can develop in a way that we would develop muscles or habits, that if you keep feeling an emotion, then you will start to just default to that emotion. And I'll get into more of it in a moment, but all of your dogs, Susie, Simba, for example, would probably be defaulting to fear a lot. And she works from that. I don't know what's going on in this situation. I should just be afraid. And then she'll respond accordingly. A lot of the rest of you, you'll have to tell me once we get closer to the end, so I kind of know if there's specific things that you might want to look at differently. For a lot of you, your dogs might be just feeling frustration. And whenever they're not sure about something, or whenever something new happens, they just go, frustration, because that's what I normally feel. I mean, I think we all know people that are like that as well. My husband's a little bit like that sometimes. I'm constantly telling him the glass is half full. Anyway, so that's kind of the basis of this. There's other things in learning. I mean, there's ethology, natural behavior. There's like evolutionary psychology, which is all new and cool and stuff right now. But this is based on more the neuroscience of emotion. So let me ask you guys just to be a little interactive as we start, because this is one of the main concepts that we're going to be talking about. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether your dog is biting someone, whether your dog is snuggling into you, whatever they are doing every minute of the day, can somebody tell me, why is your dog doing that? What is the reason that dogs do anything ever? Okay. Go ahead. I don't know who's who with all the names. Oh, all right. If you see the yellow box, talk. Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
I would just say what you taught us, that dogs only do to better their situation.
Exactly. Yep. I've told you that, but most people don't realize that. Okay, but that's true. And I think when you think of it in those terms, it's a lot easier to understand why our dogs are doing things. But all the time, they are literally just bettering their situation. They don't do things just because they love us, like sometimes we would do for our loved ones. We would do something that we really don't want to do just because we want to better our loved one's situation. Dogs are always bettering their own situation. I wouldn't go as far as to say they're selfish, but you kind of can go that way. But the two reasons that dogs better their situation are to seek pleasure or to alleviate discomfort. So no matter what they do, that is what they are always doing. So when your dog reacts on a leash, they're alleviating discomfort by losing it, because they might be trying to create space and letting that dog know, don't come close to me. Whatever it is, they are always trying to seek pleasure and alleviate discomfort. So this is concept number one of what this program is based on. And that is, we need to teach our dogs that we better their situation, that they don't need to. And this is similar to what I talk about, that we make all the decisions. Like when we put structure in place, we want to show our dogs that we make all the decisions. but think of it more on like a deeper psychological and neurological level. We want to show them that we better their situation so they don't feel like they need to. So what we're going to be doing is based on that, taking away a lot of pressure so that we can reset them and show them, I'll better your situation all the time so you don't have to do it. So that's concept number one. We will show them how to seek pleasure. We will show them that we can alleviate their discomfort. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, so that's concept number one. Concept number two comes down to the emotions. So dogs, or mammals, living creatures, generally a function in 4 what we call blue ribbon emotions most of the time. So those emotions are fear, panic, rage, and seeking. So fear is fear of the environment, Simba, like what's that? What's happening next? Like that anxiety of being unsure about what's out there, the environment. So that's fear. Panic is social connection. So that's when you see separation anxiety, or sometimes when I do evaluations and I take the leash and I take a dog away from the owner and the dog can't handle it. They can't focus. They just want to get back to their owner. Your dog that might be a bit nervous and just follows you everywhere. That's panic, social connection. And when they lose that, they freak out. So that's what panic is. Rage is frustration. So rage is the dogs that have no impulse control and will bark at you if nothing's happening. They can't get to a dog when they want to say hello, so they bark with that barrier of frustration. Most of the dogs I train, I would say, are probably dealing with frustration, rage, because that's most of the reactivity. Even though you could say it's a little bit fear-based, it's usually more frustration. Even like the postman coming past. Like, I told you to go away yesterday. Go away. It's rage, frustration. The fourth one is seeking. So seeking is curiosity, which is a good thing. So if you've got dogs, that doesn't matter where they are, they can be sniffing things. They can be saying hello to other people. You know, they happily want to meet dogs. They jump on guests when they come in because they're just so happy. It's all seeking. They're curious, like, oh, what's going to happen here? Maybe I should investigate it. Oh, there's a new person. I'm going to jump on them. So that's kind of a good thing, but you do get with some dogs too much of that. Like I've just started a Ridgeback at the moment, and she's just constantly into everything, grabbing everything, jumping on people. Like it's too much. Like she needs impulse control. But we can bring that down with impulse control. But most of the dogs I train, it's usually rage, fear, maybe a bit of panic. But generally what we want to do is we want to stop them defaulting to rage, fear, and we want them to default to seeking, because seeking opens the door to being curious, to seeking pleasure, and it also opens the door to play. Because if a dog is in rage, panic, fear, they can't play, because you have to be curious to play, and play is good. It connects you, it builds bonds. You can do tons of things with it. Scent detection. You're already probably doing a lot of this, Susie, which is probably why Simba improves in that sense, because you're switching her to seeking and she's not defaulting to fear anymore. But when your dog has a situation where they are afraid or they do feel frustration, and then that thing happens again, they can just start defaulting. It goes back to that. It just starts to be their pathway. So whenever they're not sure of something, or whenever something stimulates them even, they start defaulting to that emotion, which is why you have a lot of dogs that might start a little bit reactive and they just get more and more and more and more reactive, because they're defaulting to that emotion and they're not defaulting to seeking anymore. Because when we do things like cross and find it, we're stopping our dogs from defaulting to frustration and we're getting them to go into seeking. search for food, be interested, be engaged. And the idea is that the more you do that, the more they'll become curious. So when we do a lot of counter conditioning and they constantly see a dog that they would normally react to, we want them to be curious and engage with us because that equals reward. You can look at that in an operant way, like positive reinforcement or classical conditioning. But at the same time, we're changing their default, like to a different emotion, to a different state of mind. So that's kind of concept number 2. Shut down fear, panic, and rage, and initiate seeking or trigger seeking, for want of a better word. Otherwise, what you can see is what you're struggling with can get worse. It can become more ingrained, and it can be harder because you're building those pathways and they're strengthening, and then you've got to build different pathways, and that can be a bit of a challenge. So if your dog reacts at a dog across the street at, say, a level 5 explosion, and it takes them exploding into a level 7 until they feel that they've bettered their situation by creating space or making that dog or the postman go away, then the next time they see that dog, they're just going to start at a level 7 because that's what they felt worked last time. And then if that doesn't work after a few times, then they're just going to start at a level 9. So that's why you can have a lot of dogs that can start in a little bit of frustration, a little bit of reactivity, and it can actually turn to aggression, which is what happened with my dog, Zolly. So I do get a lot of clients that are always perplexed at why their dog was just a little bit reactive with some dogs, but now they're just reactive with every dog they see because they're defaulting to that every time they see a dog because they think this betters my situation. So, you know, I want to save resources, and rather than problem solving, I'm just going to react because has what's bettered my situation in the past. Does that make sense? So that's kind of our second concept, and pretty much kind of the main goal is we want to shut down fear, panic, or rage, and default our dogs to seeking, and show them that we will better their situation so they don't need to default to that anymore. Does that make sense? Questions? No? This is going faster than I thought. I blocked out 2 hours for this. Okay, so that's concept number 2. Concept number 3, let me just make, I had a couple of points that I wanted to add that I keep forgetting to talk about. Let me just find it. Oh, another page. And I don't know if I've mentioned to you guys, but I've been doing some sessions with a trainer in New York City who uses this system and has been using the system for years. Obviously, I don't have a lot of content showing these principles in action, but he does. So I can put a link to his Instagram page in the main feed. And if anybody's interested to kind of do a few little like almost quizzes, I guess you could say, if I post a few videos, I think that might even help with your learning because you'll be able to watch what he's doing and you'll go, he's doing that because of that turns on the seeking system or that blah, 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 blah. And so it might even help you kind of figure out what you're doing and see what you'll be learning in practice because all the exercises, everything you're doing is all based on this. Oh, Anastasia. Oh, admit. I almost removed her. Sorry, I'm just admitting Anastasia who will be coming in. Hi, Anastasia. Sorry, I don't know how long you've been waiting. Just mute yourself, but we are recording this, so you'll be able to go back and watch the rest of it. So if anybody hasn't muted themselves, just mute themselves because otherwise you're going to keep popping up. Yep, that's that. Oh, I was going to talk about the pig experiment. I won't do that. I'll put little things. The guy's name I'm talking about, his name's Brett Bailey. So I might put a few of his really good posts up. He'll love it because he'll get more followers. Okay. All right. So concept number 3 involves a different system of the brain, which probably a lot of you have heard of, which is the limbic system. So the limbic system is kind of a bit of a primitive part of the brain, which is where kind of fight or flight comes from. So when your dog we talk about loading and exploding. When your dog explodes, the limbic system is taking over. So they're going into fight or flight. That's why your dog can't hear you. That's why your dog can't take food, because everything is allocated, excuse me, to survival, and all the kind of other processes are just kind of put on hold. What we want our dogs to be able to do is stay cerebral, stay like frontal lobe, which is problem solving, thinking. They can focus, they can listen, we can teach them better. So concept number 3 is we want to shut down the limbic system and activate the cerebral cortex and try and keep them in the cerebral cortex. And you'll understand why we talk about this later when I'm talking about the reset. But the limbic system is driven by emotions, and that's where you get that default fear, panic, rage, and that's where you get the explosions. The seeking system isn't involved in that, because seeking isn't really survival in terms of I'm going to die, I need to do something. That's more, okay, we're calmer now. The saber-toothed tiger's gone back into his cave. Now we can find some food for dinner. Let's turn on seeking and we'll go back into that. So concept number 3 is we want to shut down the limbic system and keep the cerebral cortex functioning. Anastasia, you must be sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? Okay, so those are the main concepts. So they're the main 3 concepts that we're working for. Concept number 1 is we want to be the ones that better our dog's situation so they don't need to. Concept number 2 is we want to shut down fear, panic, or rage, and we want to turn on the seeking system as often as possible so that they start to default to that. Concept number 3, activate the cerebral cortex, shut down the limbic system. Make sense? So everything I'm going to go through is all based on that. No questions? When I do this with clients, it's taking me 2 hours. So I thought this is going to take, or when we get to the exercise, it might take longer. You might have more questions. Okay, so that brings us to how do we do that? So like I said, a lot of the concepts are going to be very familiar with what you've been doing. Because you guys have all been in the members page, it's not going to be such a huge amount of new information because you've already been trying a lot of this. And if anything, you're kind of going back to the beginning, applying a lot of the stuff you've already done. It's just going to be in a much more intensive way for a short period of time. But the goal is that you hopefully won't need that long-term structure, which is kind of what I often teach. If you want your dog sleeping in the bed with you in 2-3 months, great. The more committed and consistent you are to the early stages of this program, the more likely you're going to create that. Because if we are going to literally kind of reset the brain and how it activates, it has to be intense. Think of drug rehabilitation. You can't get off heroin while you're sitting at home watching Netflix, hoping that the drug dealer doesn't call you on the phone. You know, it doesn't work like that. It's too intense. You really need a reset period. So really you're putting your dogs in rehab to a certain degree, but it's got to be consistent. So what we want to do is we want to do just that. We want to reset our dogs. So this is where we come to the reset period. If you've got a really serious dog, the reset period 5 days would be a good idea. I don't think anybody's dog is that serious that you need 5 days. I'm talking dogs that are really biting people. And it's, now, who's got Coda? Is that Anastasia? Right. So I get everybody's dogs mixed up with everybody else. I know everybody by their dogs. So I apologize. So it's Alexa with Coda? No.
Alyssa.
Alyssa. Sorry, Alyssa. Sorry, Alyssa. Please don't take it personally. I just notice your dogs more than I notice the connection of names. Okay. So your dog you might want to consider doing this for 5 days rather than 3. But I'll kind of leave that up to you to decide. So the reset period is 3 days. And what we want to do is exactly what I said. We want to stop the brain defaulting to fear, panic, rage. We want to keep them in the cerebral cortex, no limbic system, and we want to really show them that we will better their situation. So like I talk about, we're going to make all the decisions for them. So that brings us to 4 rules that you've got to put in place for 3 days solid. And it's important that everybody in your household is on board with this. So even if, I mean, it depends. If you think that your family members would watch this whole video, get them to watch it. If you've got teenagers and you know that they're going to hate it, don't. Just show them the printout, because what I normally do is I email kind of a breakdown of the main points and the rules of the reset period, so you can put it on your fridge or something. So I'll post that in here as well. So if you want to just kind of go through that with everyone and just say, look, you don't have to understand why we're doing this, just don't do this, or do this. Hi doggies, I love that there's some doggies. That's great. Okay, so rule number 1, for 3 days, you cannot talk to your dog. Not a single word. I find I get different reactions from different people with these rules. Some people, everybody freaks out about one. I had a client in tears yesterday at one of these rules, and it was like, oh, but hopefully it makes sense. So rule number 1, do not talk to your dog. Yeah, go ahead.
Might be way too early, but like we're doing the whole threshold thing, and when my dog needs to go outside, not even okay for thresholds?
Nothing. So
Hand signal, or
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So let me explain, because there's a lot of reasons to this, but there's a lot of benefits to it as well. So this is the last little brain thing that I'll go over, and some of you guys will be familiar with this. So we have a system in our brain called the reticular activating system. Does anybody know what that is? So I heard about it when I studied psych, but I'd forgotten about it. So it was interesting to be reminded. So the reticular activating system is responsible for filtering out what's not important. So I live with a very busy road behind my house over my back wall, a lot of traffic, sirens. I don't even hear it because I've habituated to it, because my brain's told me, oh, look, we don't need to worry about that. I don't think that's a threat. It's there all the time. We can filter that out, because if a saber-toothed tiger comes around the corner, we want to be listening out for those paws, you know, because that's new, that's novel, that could be dangerous. So in an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. Our brain has limited resources. We need to be able to allocate those resources very quickly if we need to fight or flight. So the reticular activating system will filter out stuff that it doesn't feel as important. If you've got a 9-year-old like me, or teenagers, you know what that looks like, is they don't even hear what you say, because to them it's not important. But if their phone beeps, they're like, oh, that's important, that's social connection, I need that, I need to pay attention to that. So when we talk to our dogs all day long, I'm more conscious of it since I've been doing this with Halo. I'll be out in the backyard and I'll be like, oh, you're going to go to the toilet, okay, good job, all right, well then we'll go and get your dinner. And I'm like, shut up, like stop, because when I want her to listen to me, she's phased me out, all this white noise, she doesn't hear me. Plus our dogs don't speak English, plus verbal communication isn't their primary form of communication. So all of these things mean that our voices can become white noise. And as much as it's interesting and it's a little bit comical, the reality is there could come a day when your dog is running towards that road because they see a dog on the other side. And if you tell them to stop or to recall, it's not just the reliability of that recall, it's, are they in tune with understanding if you say something, it must be important. So if we're talking to our dogs all the time, reticular activating system says we don't really need to worry about that. And when it comes down to it, they might not listen to us. So the other thing it does by not talking to our dogs for 3 days is it will force us to use different forms of communication. Dogs communicate mainly through body language and use of space. So we're going to be forced to do that. So for thresholds, if your dog needs to go outside, we're not going to say, okay, we'll show them. But you might be changing that anyway, based on other things I'm going to say. But But what is a dog thinking if we stop talking to them for 3 days? Are they going to be wandering off in a corner thinking, mum doesn't love me anymore? Probably not, because dogs don't necessarily think like that. Why don't they think like that? Because that doesn't really better their situation in the present moment. Everything they do is bettering their situation in the present moment. But what it will do is it will make them curious. And that turns on the seeking system. So there's multiple reasons why not speaking to your dog for 3 days can be really, really beneficial. The more people you have in your household, the more difficult that's going to be, especially if you have people in your household that are a little bit like, oh, you don't need to do all that silly stuff with the dog. You just show them you're the alpha. So if you've got that in your house, you're going to have some conversations, because like I said, if there isn't consistency, it's just not going to work. So we want to turn on the seeking system. They'll be curious because they'll be like, why isn't she talking to me? Like, why is she gesturing and using spatial pressure all the time? This is interesting. So when you get to day 4 and you start bringing back some words, but in very specific ways, what's going to happen? Oh my God, mum said something. That's interesting. That must be important. Reticular activating system goes, oh my God, she's talking to us again. Listen, this must be important. And whatever we say is going to be very specific, and it's going to have a very specific reason. It makes them curious. So that's kind of feeds into that. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, this is what my client was in tears over yesterday. You cannot touch your dog for 3 days. I'm so glad I'm recording this. I'm going to send everybody's faces to Brett if everybody gives me permission so he can see everybody's reactions. So obviously you might need to touch your dog to put a leash on them or to put their collar on, but that's it. No affection, nothing. No Cesar Millan corrections, nothing. Why? Again, different reasons. It'll make them curious. Affection is a funny thing because we see it a lot differently to the ways dog sees it. If you watch dogs or you watch wolves, they don't touch each other in the same way or for the same reasons that human beings do. Not that dogs are wolves, and we have moved away from the whole dominance theory, alpha kind of system, but they are pack animals to a degree, and they do have social hierarchies to a degree, just not in the same way that wolves do, but they still have very similar communication styles. And generally, if you look at a wolf pack, whoever gives the most affection is the lowest on the totem pole. So that's one reason. The breeding pair, or what we used to call the alpha, tend to give the least amount of affection, and everybody else is vying to give them affection. So generally when younger wolves or other wolves approach the breeding pair, they go down low and they try and lick under their chin to kind of be like, hey, can I come into your space? Like, and sometimes they get told to F off, and other times they get some attention or whatever. So in that respect, we don't really know how dogs see affection, but there is a very real chance that it could be slightly confusing to them if we're trying to establish bonds in certain ways, and then we're physically communicating with them in ways that are inconsistent with other things that we're doing. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the more we touch our dogs, the less meaningful it is when we do. So when we touch them, we want it to be for a specific reason. It's good for bonding. It's good for getting those feel-good hormones pumping. But if we're constantly doing it, who are we really doing it for? Is it really for our dog, or is it for us? So I think, and I do it too. One of the things I often used to say to clients was, no affection on demand. Does your dog ever walk past you when you're on the couch and you just put your arm out, you just touch them, you don't even realize you're doing it? Like, is it really for them, or is it for you? So I think if anything, and this is what my client was in tears over yesterday, because she said, my dog's a little bit of a therapy dog like that. It makes me feel good. And I said, I totally get it. But I said, it's almost like a bit of an experiment. Like you'll notice that you're like, oh, like I'm missing out on that. So when you do bring it back, it's going to be more meaningful to them. It's going to be more meaningful to you, but it's going to make you very aware of when you're lavishing on affection, which it isn't necessarily helping them or you in any way, but it kind of makes you aware of a little bit of codependence maybe. And if you do have a dog that goes into that panic a little bit, that social connection, not necessarily helping that. The whole idea that affection causes separation anxiety isn't really relevant. We know that's not really how it works, but it doesn't necessarily help it if we're constantly just piling on affection or giving them affection on demand. So we're going to not touch our dog for 3 days. When we do start to touch our dog again, it's going to be for a specific reason, and it's going to have a lot more meaning to them and to us. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3 isn't going to be that difficult because you're already doing rule number 1 and rule number 2, but rule number 3 is no excitement for 3 days. If you take your dog for a jog on the leash or whatever, that's fine. That's exercise. If you take them for a walk, that's fine. That's exercise. But it's more, not that you guys are probably doing this, but it's more, you don't want to come in the door and go, hi, mommy, and like get them really excited, or be putting them in a situation anywhere where they might explode or react. Because what happens if they get overexcited? They're very high in arousal, straight into the limbic system. And that's what we don't want, because then they're fear, panic, rage. And we're trying to reset that. So the more we can keep them calm, the more they're in cerebral cortex, they're thinking, they're focusing, and they're interested, they're curious, they're seeking. So I won't talk about the next bit until I've talked about the last rule. But does that make sense with no excitement? So again, if anybody in your household is wrestling your dog in the evening in the middle of the lounge room, we're going to cut that out. If your dog's a really super driven dog and you play with them in a structured way, that's okay. I would probably just keep it to a minimum, but remember, you're not going to be saying anything. So if you're kind of on the fence, I would say probably don't. And just take them for a walk or a bit of a jog on a leash or something like that. But we really want to try and keep that arousal low. So that's rule number 3. Rule number 4, and this is for 2 weeks. If your dog is not in the crate, or if you're at work and your dog is free roaming in the house because they don't get into trouble, that's okay. But if your dog isn't alone or in your crate, it's tethered to you on a leash. Generally 6-foot leash. Why? A lot of the pressure, disagreements, and issues we have with our dogs is on leash. So you almost want to reset the meaning of the leash so that it's not adding to pressure. So it's not adding to the frustration. Leash reactivity, the leash adds a lot of frustration. So we almost want to reset what the leash means. Plus, if your dog is tethered to you, then you have to better their situation because they're on a leash with you. So they can't go off and better their situation, alleviate discomfort, seek pleasure, because you're doing all that for them. It teaches them about space. It teaches them to just be with you and follow you, and they just stop really thinking about it. Plus, if you do take them out for a walk, they're tethered to you all the time. So it's not necessarily even going to be that arousing because, oh, mum opened the door and we're going this way now, because they're just following you everywhere. If you're sitting on the couch in the evening, they can't come into your space. You can't talk to them. So you would just use spatial pressure to move them away and sit down again. If you've got a dog that's a bit of a nutcase on the leash, you're going to have to understand your leash handling to help give them space as well. But you can take them for a bit of a walk so they can toilet. You just come back in, you sit down. But obviously you've got to cook, you've got to pick the kids up from school, you've got to have a shower. So that's when they would go into the crate to relax. Make sense? So a lot of people freak out about that one, but all you guys, which ones did you freak out about the most? Probably the no talking, I think. I'm going to take some screenshots and post those. Go ahead.
Is it a good time to ask questions?
Sorry.
Do you have
Yeah,
more?
Alexa. Sorry, Alexa, go.
I have a couple. So the last one,
Yeah.
we have 2 dogs. There's only 2 of us. So I'm trying to figure out. I do have one of those. I
Waist.
think it's for like when you jog, where it's got the 2 attached to it. That I could have 2 dogs attached to me.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you would suggest?
I would probably, I think it's
Or
going to
pick
make your
one
life,
dog?
I think it would make your life easier if you alternated with the crate. One
Yeah.
dog's out on the leash, the other dog's in the crate, and then you switch it up, I think.
Okay. And we're
Um,
not counting the that it's got to be in a crate, right?
yeah, because
Like
think of it this way. We don't want to make our dogs doing anything to better their own situation. So that means we've got to be controlling them 24/7. If your dog is in the backyard when you're out, that's going to be difficult if they're the kind of dog that fence fights or they're barking at birds. So you're going to have to think of a way to change that. If you're thinking, oh, they're going to have to go in the laundry, then I suggest you start doing that to get them used to it before the reset period, because if they're a dog that goes to frustration and now they're in the laundry for 4 hours when you're at work or whatever, it could increase the frustration before it decreases it. So you might need to work that out. If they're inside the home and they don't get into any trouble when you're out and they just kind of lie on their mat or whatever, then that's cool. But I mean, crating during the day, generally you don't want a dog to be in a crate any more than about 3 or 4 hours. But so have a think about that. But yeah, I would alternate. Sorry, who else had a question? Yep.
I have a lot of questions. So, for the do not talk to the dog, is it okay if like people are just talking in the house,
Yeah.
but not directly to the dog?
Talking to each other. I think dogs are smart enough to know when we're talking to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do. So my house is crazy. And all my dogs are separated. Xena specifically is in like my son's room and the hallway. And I do have kennels in my garage. Would it be best to, or is this like a little too much, just to move her to the kennels in the garage so that there's less of a chance that anybody could talk to her, that I can kind of focus on her more? Would that be okay? Or is that?
I think you only you can really answer that, but just think of it
I
from
think
those.
she'd be comfortable. I think she'd be fine there. I
I
think
think
it'd
just
be
get her
easier
used to it. Get her used to it for a few days, see how she goes. Maybe
okay.
a couple of days. But we are going to bring the crate back in a more specific way after the reset period. But yeah, if you feel she's more comfortable in there, it's fine if they're in a crate watching everybody run around or whatever. But if they tend to react to that, then
She only has reactions if you reach into the crate. But she loves her crate. And she doesn't have a problem when she runs free. So
you can alternate them, as long as she's managed and you think whatever you're doing in that moment is the best option for her to be in that calm mindset. Then I think have a think about it. But yeah, that's the thing. I think when if anybody here like is single, living in a house with just you and your dog, this is going to be a lot easier. Because you don't
very much, because that's where I'm getting to. Before I forget too, the no excitement. She loves to play ball.
Okay.
Is that okay? That's usually our exercise. I don't mind switching it up and just giving her a walk rather than playing ball. It is structured. She is e-collar trained. So that was my next question. Do I not use this? Because technically this is like talking.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that's okay because that's tactile.
Okay.
Because the e-collar does have a very specific meaning.
Yes.
The e-collar doesn't become white noise like our voice does, So I think that's fine. If you've got a very structured game, but can she bring the ball back and release it without you saying anything?
She's already struggling with that as it is.
Right.
So I think I'm just going to walk her.
So if that's the case,
she gets she gets so worked up over the ball that I have to say, drop it like 5 times.
Then I wouldn't. If she was like Halo, just to toot my own horn, but if she was like Halo and she will just give it to you if you don't say out, then that's fine. But the other thing is, if she needs to have an e-collar on somewhere for you to be able to do that, I would be wondering, does that mean it's an environment where something could pop out, or she might make choices you don't want her to, and you know.
She goes out in the front yard, and I have a very busy street, so I always leave that e-collar on just in case that ball. She won't go out into the street. She's threshold trained. Unless the ball goes out, she will chase it. So the e-collar is my come, and she won't pass the threshold with the e-collar.
I mean, even if your dogs are outside just roaming around to go to the toilet, I would even be reducing that as much as possible. I mean, Brett Bailey, who
she's not outside much.
Okay. Brett Bailey, who I do this with, he's literally training like meat trade dogs and human aggressive dogs in the middle of New York City.
Yeah.
So, you know, those dogs, to have a dog in New York City, you've got to manage them. So a lot of those dogs are living managed in homes. And I've spoken to him about this. I said, it's not that easy in Australia. Like, people come to work and their dog's in the backyard. And he goes, well, are they reacting to things? And I said, possibly. And he goes, well, that's something that you guys are going to have to figure out, because in New York, that's one aspect of him doing this, that it's a bit easier because because the dogs are just managed. But so whatever you have to do to manage your dogs during the day so that they can't go limbic system, fear, panic, rage, that's the key. So the more they're tethered or in their crate or managed somewhere where they can't get into
that's fine.
trouble. Yeah.
Okay, now here's my biggest problem with the tethered to me. I have 9 dogs in my house and they're all reactive. And so it's not like I can just walk through the house with her tethered to me. I guess I could, if I like crate, all the dogs are crated. So I guess I could crate some dogs for a while and she could go cook with me, or, you know, random moments like that.
That's going to be tricky.
Boom.
That's going to be tricky. I don't even know what to tell you, but
I'll figure it out. I don't know. You said that that's the only thing that I was like, I don't know that I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But have a think about it. If you want to troubleshoot and think and post something to try and think of ideas. I think sometimes the way my brain works, sometimes if I want to make sure I don't make a mistake with something, sometimes what I do is I just assume that the worst possible scenario is going to happen. And then I just plan around that. So if you were thinking all of those dogs are going to attack each other, how would you manage that? Well, yeah, so that's tricky, but troubleshoot it with us if you want. But the main goal is those 3 concepts. How do you maintain those 3 concepts for 3? Well, it's not going to be 3 days. It's going to be as long as possible, for like 2 weeks. But don't forget that it's okay for dogs to spend time in kennels and crates. I would imagine that none of you guys have dogs that spend as much time in a crate as Halo does.
I'm sure I do. In all honesty, having 9 dogs here and me going to work and training with other dogs, like the non-talking to them is, because I split up, you know, my attention to all the dogs, that's really not a problem for me. And I have seen an improvement from it. Like, my dogs actually listen when I talk.
But let me stop you there for a second and tell me why do they listen to you more?
Because I don't talk to them. It means something when I actually say something. I don't give them a lot of a free affection.
Which means what?
That I'm important, that I'm a huge resource.
Let's think of all those concepts we've been talking about. So what's happening?
I have become the number one concept. What are we at? They're seeking for my attention or something.
Because they're like, oh, she said something, it's got to be important, we should be curious. So seeking turns on curiosity. So that's when you think about it in a neurological way, that's what's happening. You know what I mean? You can think of it in an operant way. We get reinforced when there could be positive reinforcement coming. You can kind of think of it like that, but this is more thinking of it in that emotional sense. Let us know what your plan is. I'd be interested.
Wish me luck.
But yeah, like I said, don't feel guilty, guys, if this means your dogs need to spend more time in a crate. Halo spends most of her time in a crate, but when she is out of the crate, I'm very specific about what I'm doing with her. Like, even if it's I want her to have half an hour wandering around the backyard, I'm specifically planning for that because I've got to monitor her. Even though she's just starting to have a few minutes by herself outside if I'm inside, which is why I looked out the window the other day and she was standing on our outside table. But it's very specific what I do with her. So it's either walk, exercise, train. I'm literally planning on her just being a dog because that's important too. But the reason she's come this far and she hasn't really developed any bad habits is because of all that management and structure, because she needs it, because she's a psychopath. So so don't feel guilty if your dogs are spending more time in the crate, because what you'll be doing with them when they're outside of the crate will have so much more purpose and will be biologically fulfilling. And, you know, when we get to the play stages and that kind of stuff, it'll all be very specific. So don't feel guilty if they have to spend more time.
I'm doing that with the puppy right now. That's another problem is I have.
And you've got a puppy you've got to deal with. Holy heck.
Yeah, I know, but I couldn't miss this up. So I'll suck it up. I'll figure it out somehow.
But you know what? But what I meant to say at the beginning of this, guys, is if it's a real struggle, or if you're like, this is bullshit, like, why am I doing this? I really want to know, because I'm starting to do this program with clients. Obviously, it's the same but different for me. I assume that a lot of my clients probably just talk to their husband and bitch about it if they don't like it, and I'll never know. So if they drop off or if they don't get much improvement, I want to know, is it the program, or is it because they found it too hard, or did they just not do the work? Like, so I would appreciate your brutal honesty. Like, I can't think of a way where you could actually give me feedback anonymously, but I'm going to try and work that out. So let me know if you're like, I'm really struggling with this. Doesn't mean I'm going to be able to give you an answer, but I just would be keen for the feedback. Yeah.
I don't have to be anonymous. I can tell you
Good.
blunt how it is, because I know how it is with my clients. I'm like,
Yep.
Can you just tell me? I can help
I
you
think
so
I
much
take
more if you're
feedback pretty well, so don't be afraid to tell me.
okay.
Yes.
So the dog has to be tethered to us at all times when the dog isn't in the crate.
Pretty much, unless you go out and your dog's left alone in the house and you know that they won't get themselves into trouble.
Which I can't do because my dog has separation anxiety. I haven't been able to ever leave her alone since we adopted her 10 months ago.
Okay.
I have worked on her not following me, the areas in the house where she's not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was quite proud of the achievement that she is now happy when she's by herself in the backyard. Because previously, the first month, she didn't even toilet. She didn't even just lay in the sun or was out there. I had to be out there with her or back inside. Mm-hmm. But my question was, does it matter how long the leash is? Could we change the leash? For example, if I want to take her out to toilet, I feel like she needs to do massive circles and walk for ages and ages. Can I put her on a long line when I know she's
yeah, I think if you let them off to go to the toilet in the backyard, they don't have to be tethered to you necessarily. Okay. If you have a dog that they're going to run to the fence and start fence fighting, then you might want to have on a long line.
We live in an absolute quiet area. We have no neighboring dogs. She never runs to the fence.
That's cool.
She even blocked off the gate because she used to look through the gate when people walk past, through the gaps in the gate. And we blocked that off with a shade cloth. So now she can't see anything and she lays in the sun for an hour at times, just resting, doing nothing.
Okay.
Can she do this?
I think that's okay. I just want when she's with you, just make sure she's tethered to you or in her crate. If she's outside doing that and you know she's not getting into trouble, I guess that's like if you've gone to work and she just relaxes, and you've got to be able to do that, right? I mean, we're not robots. We can't take like 2 weeks off work and just be tethered to our dog. But
I actually don't work, so I am actually home with her 24/7.
Oh, okay. But it's like, it is good for her to understand, you know, you have to go and do something for a couple of hours, but just as long as it's not triggering, like you're obviously experienced, she defaults to panic a lot. Don't feel like this is going to set her back. It might be, it might make you go, what the hell's going on? Like if she's unsure, she might default to that a little bit, but you are still going to reset her and show her again, oh, this is why we're doing this. This is what's happening. Hi, Anastasia's husband. I know what you guys are
Good
laughing
question,
about.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, we
We're
just
we're just discussing.
because we can't let mouse outside. She'll do fence fighting.
Right.
Definitely.
Fence
with
fighting and the birds fighting and whatever.
So
everything.
that's probably frustration. You know what I
But
mean?
at the same time, she loves to rest in the sun,
Yeah,
and
sunbase.
it's
Yeah, baking.
just sunbaking for an hour. It's fine when it's no
Any
distractions.
Yeah,
We have a pole
for
for what is what?
that was for
Agility training.
Yeah.
Yes, for agility training. So you have a pole and you put a leash on it, so they can't.
Can we use
Go.
it?
Can we
for
use
her,
it?
Or
For her to just spend a bit of time outside.
yeah,
Yes,
Um,
like on a leash, but say space boundaries, so she can't go more than.
what's
Some
what's
lot-
the purpose of her being outside? Is it because you have to leave her somewhere, or so she can
No,
go?
no, no.
no, she just really enjoys her morning sun baking. So
So who
or
better,
we just stop it.
who betters her situation and helps her seek pleasure?
That's a good question. Yes.
You're gonna get there.
Yep.
Because she's going to frustration.
Mm.
She needs to understand that you help her seek pleasure. You help her alleviate
Yeah.
discomfort. So if you were going to do that, I know
Yeah.
it's inconvenient. I would go out there and sit there with her.
Okay.
Like, be on your
Yeah,
makes sense.
phone or a little bit of stuff on your laptop or whatever you might
Yeah.
have to do, or read your book or something, so that you're the center of it all.
Mm.
Oh, I get to lie in the sun. I love that because mum's helping
Yeah.
me do that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
We're
yeah.
going to get there where she can do it by herself and that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But later on, you are going to want to be conscious that nothing is kind of making her regress really quickly. And that's the thing about this. In a couple of months, or how long it kind of takes you to move through everything, if you want to say, oh, they're doing well now, I wanted to sleep in my bed because we've gone through all that period and I'll let you sleep in your bed, you're going to see very quickly if they regress. Similar to what I talked about with structure when we bring it back. You'll see if they regress, but with this even more so, because you can see this is similar to what I teach, but it's way more intensive, way more intensive.
Yep. Yep.
Intensive so that you can get out there and live in the community. Same thing with the drug addict analogy. You want to be intensive so you can get back out and live in the community, because if you try and get off drugs when you're in the community, you're going to be up and down and up and down and up and down.
Yeah,
It takes so much longer, and you've got all these rules you have to follow because there's too much distracting you and setting you back. So that's
Mhm.
what it's about.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And can I play ball with her? I don't need to tell her to drop it. She will pretty much bring it back to me.
For her, it's work.
It's work. So basically, she chases the ball. I can send a video how she does it, and she just brings it back either in my hands or she drops it by my feet. So I don't have to
I'd
tell
say
her
for
anything.
I mean, she's a healer, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she needs a bit of job, and if she defaults to frustration, you want to be careful that she's not getting more frustrated because she's not having an outlet. So if her play is very structured, she knows she's got to pick it up, she knows she brings it back, and she knows she spits it out, and you can do that with her without saying anything.
Yeah, I can
Do it. I would probably just shorten it. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's equally trained as well, so she's pretty good.
Okay, cool. But whatever you're doing, just be conscious of, is there anything in the environment that could set her off before I do this? Because you want to avoid all of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
because
you.
Eagle, he's different story. He doesn't drop the ball. I'm gonna stop with him.
We'll
but
go
with
into
her, it's
play
easier.
later on. We'll probably go into play after the phase 1, phase 2. Phase 3, we'll probably do play, because we want them seeking, curious, having fun with you, because you're
Yep.
helping them
Mhm.
find pleasure, and play helps them find pleasure, and you can't play unless you're curious. So
Yep.
play is going to be an important part of this.
Yep.
I just need to get some video of play because I don't have any.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Who was that?
May I ask another question?
Oh, yeah.
please?
That's okay.
I'll ask questions on
Oh.
her behalf.
Yeah.
About the leash. So does it matter who they toggle to? So me or myself or Anastasia?
I don't think so, unless one of
Because we've
you
got two.
really
dogs.
changes the behavior. I don't see why not. I don't think
So because if she goes away, I work from home quite often, and
So we
yeah,
can do.
we can do
swap.
Just
swap.
as long as everybody is incorporating crate time, it's not a case of, oh, we could keep her out longer if you tether her now. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
actually want them to go, and now you relax for 2 hours. And
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Martha
yeah.
great.
Yeah, cool.
It's
Sorry.
comfortable there.
Who is next?
Yep.
Yeah. I can't. Are you muted? I think you're muted. Are you unmuted now? I can't hear you. You might have to sign language. Can anybody hear Jennifer, or is it just me? I haven't muted you. It says you're unmuted.